an industry that kick-started this humble colony and launched us onto the world stage. Forged by remarkable men and women with a never-say-die spirit, Stockman's story is as diverse as the land itself. Through depressions, strikes, droughts and pests, they always stood strong. The expansion of the stock industry was a driving force. It generates more than $65 billion in our economy each year. Beef, veal, lamb, mutton and goat. We're looking at a pretty healthy future in agriculture. But it all starts out there, in the paddock. From the tip of the Kimberley to the heart of Tasmania, Australian stockmen go about their work in the same spirit as we always have. Jackaroos and Gillaroos look after the stock on the stations. Believe me, these properties can be enormous, and we're responsible for moving cattle hundreds of kilometres at times. Some holdings up north are over 700,000 hectares, with up to 24,000 head of livestock. The numbers are huge, and there are plenty of jobs for stockmen, ringers, cooks, and station hands. Every day is different. Feeding, watering, mustering, vaccinating, droving, branding, tagging, weighing. Yeah, it can get pretty tough out here. In this period, our export numbers multiplied over 200%. 1 in 5 Australians were employed as shepherds or stockmen. They were living in the bush and working on the land. Patents for shearing machines were registered and railways linked up the interior with the coastal cities, making it more cheaper to ship. The industry began to take off. By the 1850s, Australia was producing more wool than all Europe combined. Well, there was nowhere busier or noisier than the old shearing sheds. Yells, bells, whistles and the endless clatter of shears. At the time, who would have predicted that by the end of the century, we'd be thrown off the sheep back and the boom times would go bust. This land of ours can certainly be cruel and untamable. The Queensland bush was about to become a battleground. The bosses wanted more profits, and the shearers wanted a fair go. After a push from some pastoralists to reduce shearing rates, all hell broke loose. On New Year's Day 1887, the shearers at Isis Down Station held a meeting to discuss their future. This meeting was the birth of the Queensland Shearers Union. Pretty soon, disputes about pay and working conditions broke out across the entire country, and various groups banded together to form the Australian Workers' Union. Edna Ziegenbein, or Jessup, became a boss drover at the age of 23. She and her team moved 1,550 bullocks across the Barkly tableland to Jajara, near Mount Isa, Queensland, a distance of over 2,240 kilometres. So many people from so many stories, living and working beneath the same swagger stars. The old-time drovers were at the heart of Australia's boom times. Gold had come and gone, but cattle and wool were the backbone of the rural economy. Australia really was the lucky country. But it was the knowledge of the Aboriginal stockmen that taught us most about this land. Thousands of years of knowledge was their gift to the stockmen. The Indigenous contribution will always underpin this vast industry of ours. It's said that Indigenous stockmen experienced greater equality than in other industries. And tradition's always held that the drover's campfire is a place where everyone's equal, all equal under the sky. Times have changed. There aren't as many drovers today, but the stockman is still out there, doing what we've always done, living and working under these big blue skies, with the North Eye always heard.
How it all first started, my dad taught himself how to make a platter whip out of a R.M. Williams handbook.
Yeah, okay.
And then he taught me, but we didn't know how to finish them off properly.
Yep.
So I just inquired around a few saddlers and saddleries.
Yep.
Without much success. Then one suggested I go and see a bloke called Herb Sefton. He was an old bushy, retired to town.
Yep.
And he was a self-taught whip maker.
Wow.
So I gave him a ring, he said to come out, he showed me how to finish off the belt.
Yep.
Then he said, I'll teach you to make a whip if you like. That's how it all started, yeah.
Oh, amazing.
After a while with Herb, I went to the R.M. Williams plating school, and R.M. is still alive at Hodge Cabale, just out of Toowoomba.
That was school?
Used to, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then I went down to bloke Fred Jarvis and Liam Gather. He taught me all the fancy patterns, adding names, dates in the handles, all that sort of stuff. So I sort of got a bit off each and you get your own style after a while.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've all passed away over the years, so I've got to keep it alive and keep it going.
Yeah.
Do you teach people now?
I have done over the years, not at this direct moment or not, no, but
Yeah.
probably taught 15, 20 people over the years. One of my daughters can plat.
Yeah.
I had a young bloke from Weewalk come down to do work experience for school 2 years ago, and when the pastoral college was open out here, Basically do classes of them at night as well.
Interesting. So you're trying to keep it alive.
Yeah, it's part of our heritage and our history. Stockman's an Australian invention.
Yeah.
So you've got to keep it alive and keep it going and get other people trained up. Yeah. Inches. And then it'll start to taper. Once it starts to taper, it tapers all the way. Getting that shape, that weight and that taper right, all comes down to how well the whip's going to fall and crack when it's finished. And as you can see, all these strands are tapering width-wise, thickness-wise all the way.
Yep.
So there's the pieces in the belly. No, but all the different spots, there's no sharp step in the whip, just a nice slow gentle taper. That's the difference.
So that's kangaroo like.
No, that's cow, that's exactly the same as I'm making now, but it's been rolled and this one hasn't yet.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And I'll trim that off roughly the same length as pushing past the knots, about there. About there. Like that. And these bits here, they'll start to fray up once we start cracking the whip. Now to put that cracker on the fall, so you fall on the cracker like that, go around the cracker, through the eye of it, hold that bit there and just pull it down tight. It's called a stock whip. The stock whip's an Australian invention. So to join them up, you bring the whip up onto the stock, you get him up over there like that, small part of the whip, bring him down through this keeper here on the stock. Down through there, keep feeding that whip down through that keeper. This keeper will come down the stock, get him up over that binding, bring him down, they come down and they'll interlock there. So the whole whip pivots off that keeper there. Here we go, you ready? Yep. Let's see what happens here.
You see.
Seems to work right in the left hand, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I try and make all my whips ambidextrous, so I'll see if I can get it going just as good, if not better, in the right hand. Yep, seems to work just good in either hand, doesn't it?
Almost like a screwdriver.
So what you'll see now, see how the cracker's all frayed up now?
Yeah.
Because every time the whip cracks, just a little bit on the end, breaking the sound barriers. It's travelling over 1,200 kilometres an hour. So I was saying inside how the stock whip's an Australian invention, but a whip itself was the first man-made thing to break the sound barrier. Now that cracker will last a long time, but eventually this starts to wear back towards that little knot. Once it gets close enough, just replace it because these fibres are what's making the noise. But as you saw inside, it's pretty easy to make. Now when I was making the whip, I was explaining about getting the shape and the weight and the tape and the balance and everything right. What I'm trying to achieve in the finished product, if I can just lay that whip out, it lays out and cracks next to no bounce. The less bounce, the better it is balance. So that one's pretty good. Another way to test that is do an overhead flick on that. When you do that overhead flick, it feels like trying to pull a handle out of your hand. The whip's too heavy for the handle or vice versa. But this one will make the grade, this one's pretty good. Now you don't need brute strength to crack a whip. You see some people, they try and wind them up, give it everything they've got and they lift themselves off their feet. They're just going to wreck their whip and their shoulder. It's sort of like driving your car and redlining it in every gear. It'll do it, but it's not going to last as long. So if you've got a good foiling whip, the whip will do the work for you. You don't have to make it work. Sort of like you don't have a dog and bark yourself, you know. So if you've got a good foiling whip, everywhere you point that whip, it should just crack the next to no effort. Got a one-handed windscreen wiper. Intermittent. So as you can see, you don't need any brute strength. You can set a good foiling whip, just let the whip do the work for you. Any questions so far? Must be getting better explaining things then, I reckon. So the reason I do get me out here each year, this is my 14th season out here this year, is that the stock whip's part of our heritage and our history, an Australian invention, like I said before, tool of a trade for Stockman. A lot of people seeing whips hang up in shops, but never get to see them being made. So while I'm here, you get to see all different aspects of whip making. This is the second one of these I've done today. I've played up some half flat handles. I've got some foundations to put on some handles, and I'll be doing some work on a kangaroo hide whip this afternoon as well. So there's something going on there all day, all different aspects of whip making. So feel free to call by at any stage, ask as many questions as you like, and I'll do my best to answer them for you honestly. Now all my whips are for sale, that's my income while I'm here. They all come with a demonstration of the whip, lesson in whip cracking. If you can't crack a whip, I'll teach you to crack it. A couple of spare crackers, show you how to make them, put them on, and a bit about the safety and maintenance of it all. Probably nowhere else in Australia you get all that before you part with your money. Alrighty, that's about it for me. Thank you very much for that. Hope you enjoyed that.
Very much.
Enjoy your time in the hall. Safe travels wherever you're going.
Care. So we want to get through that, and if we do our job today, we're going to leave you with a really good appreciation of what our stockman goes through. Okay, the Australian culture, we think so much of our stockman 25 years ago. In the opening ceremony of the Sydney Olympics, we actually started off with our Australian stockman, so it's ingrained in our culture. And I think the gap's widening a little bit from the city to the bush. But I think there's always a bit of bush in all of us, okay? The bush is where we actually started from. It was the bush that built the city, not the other way around. So I think we've all got a little bit of connection, and hopefully we can do a really good job today of bringing that a little bit closer together. All right, we're going to bring out a few different horses throughout the day. We'll introduce them as we go along. We're going to bring out a lot of stock whips throughout the show. We'll bring out the sheep a little bit later on, and when we bring the sheep out, that's when we typically bring out some working dogs to help us with that. We've actually got a young working dog here. We're going to start the show with him today. We're going to see how he goes. This young dog here, this is young Smitty. Okay, we called him Smitty, very originally named, because he's a Smithfield Terrier cross. All right, but our stock horse has got that beautiful kind nature, so that when we pull up, we can just drop our reins, and he's ready to go to work. He's listening to the instructions, ready to get going. Now, even though Mate's only a young horse, he's relatively young, 4 years of age, he's showing a lot of promise to be a really, really good mustering horse, this little fella. And to give you a great idea, a good example of what I look for in a mustering horse. Recently, we got a contract to muster 98 cows out of a single paddock, and he did such a good job, he rounded them up to 100. Oh dear, it started already, hasn't it? Well, as a stockman, we've got to learn to overcome a lot of different adversities in our day-to-day life, and flies are just one of the ones we've got to overcome. You guys are probably lucky when you travel around the outback. You probably carry a bit of fly spray or insect repellent, any of those sorts of things. Stockman doesn't get those sort of luxuries, so he's got to be a little bit more creative with how we keep those flies away. And this is one of the best ways that we've seen to do it. Today you're going to see a lot of is this guy here. The Australian stock whip. That's the correct name for it. A lot of people, when they think of whips, they automatically go to a very famous character, Indiana Jones. He was famous for carrying a whip, but he did not carry a stock whip. Indiana Jones carried a bullwhip. Because horses typically do not like a whip being cracked when we're sitting on their back. Okay, you can appreciate that, how close that whip cracks to his eyes, ears and nose. We need to build a lot of trust with the horse so that he knows the whip's not going to hurt him in any way, shape or form. It's a beauty in the sense that it tells the whole story about how a whip is made, what they're made from, how they work, who uses them, where we use them. It goes through the whole cycle of a stock whip. So I had to give it a really unique and original title. It's a stockman's prized possession. It's a drover's tool of choice. He uses it to keep him moving and to save his weary voice. But in the rugged hands of a stockman, or the soft hands of a boy, it's most important to remember that the stock whip's not a toy. For the power of the stock whip, as it's travelling super fast, can pop an eye and break the skin and cause a real sore arm. So you may hear the whips are cracking wherever you may go. From up the bush mustering or around a country show, but from city or the high country, wherever your path may track, I think there's nothing more Australian than to stand and have a crack. There we are. Okay, it's the first ever man-made object to break the speed of sound. That's about 750 miles per hour. Roughly about 1,100 metres per second. Always had a pack horse on one side. Sometimes you'd even take a 2 or 3. And the pack horse is really important. He carries all the gear when we travel. If we go out for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a few months, we put all of our gear in those saddle bags, strap them onto the pack saddle, and off we go. And then on the other side here, we always take a spare riding horse. Okay, now, sometimes we take a couple of those as well. Number one, we get a flat tyre, got a spare horse to ride. But more often than not, why we take a spare horse is because mate here is going to need a day off every second day, so when he's having a day off, having a spell, I've got a spare horse to ride. So I've been on the hunt now for a while for a beautiful assistant to join me in the show. We've been looking for someone really smart and talented and charismatic and energetic and beautiful and pretty and all those sorts of things we look for in a beautiful assistant. We haven't been able to find anyone yet, so I'm going to use my wife Kelly today. So you guys can give Kelly a big round of applause now. That'll be really Alright, it's the most important thing in any relationship. To build that trust with this horse here, what we do, it's going to look a little bit different to what you might first think. We get as far away from him as we can, and start putting a bit of energy into the whip. Now, he's not no reaction. You might think we don't want a reaction, but I actually do, and I'll explain that as we go. No reaction, so we up the energy a little bit more. And I keep working my way in until he gives me the reaction, which is that there. He's just walking away. Now, all he's saying at that point is that looks a little bit too close, and I don't like it. Now, you might wonder why I'm still cracking the whip, because I'm scared of the horse, and I'm going to explain that horse. Okay, but horses are so intelligent, they will work out in 2 seconds flat. If every time he runs away from the scary thing stops, we end up teaching the horse to be scared of the whip. So that's the opposite to what we want. So we continue going with the whip until he works out and he goes, you know what, that's not impacting me in any way, shape or form. And when he stops reacting, at that point we stop with the whip and go and tell him he's done the right job. It creates a beautiful horse to ride later on when they can understand that. And I reckon Kel's going to put him to sleep there because he's done it pretty well there today.
Now, I tell you what, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the women of the outback, and the different roles they've played throughout the years. Through to today, so today you often find the women working in the yards alongside the fellas, even taking up leadership roles, leading those stock camps. But think back to the pioneering days, life was a lot harder. Husbands were away for long periods of time, weeks, months, and sometimes even years, so everything fell back to the wife to keep the home fires burning. She had to be multi-skilled. She had to be able to raise the children, educate the children, feed the children. So let's just think about feeding the children. She had to grow all the food and harvest all the food. She had to grow the stock and butcher the stock just to put a basic meal on the table. She had to make all the clothes, mend all the clothes.
No click and collect.
No click and collect back then, nothing like that. So, could you just imagine after a long, hard day of just trying to keep everything together, having to sit down and do those tedious little jobs, while the kids are in bed, and it would have been by candlelight too, so no electricity. So it would have been a really long, lonely and hard lifestyle, and something that we all need to recognise.
Yeah, it's very important we do recognise just how good and easy Kelly's got at this modern day. No, not at all. Actually, look, it's a really good point that Kelly makes, because when we come to the Stockman's Hall of Fame, a lot of emphasis is obviously put around the Stockman side of things. Now that's really important as well, but I don't think there's enough ever spoken about, probably not even written in the hall itself, of the role that women have played throughout the outback. And Kelly Scram and Shitter and all those different things that everyone's on. Does that take a picture? Yep, we'll get a copy after the show. I think you had a picture for me and Kel, that'd be good. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Say cheese. Cheese. There we go. Right, let's give him a big round of applause. I told you he's a little rip at this place. Designed and produced by Kelly and myself, and we make these completely out of synthetic. When we say synthetic, they're made out of yachting rope, okay? The best thing to make a whip out of anywhere in the world, without doubt, is kangaroo hide. It is the strongest leather in the world for its weight. Very thin, very fine. It's also very expensive. So much like your good dress shoes or dress boots or anything like that, you don't want to go slamming them through the muck and the sand and the mud and that sort of thing. You've got to look after them. So we want to make a product that can handle all those environments, but also it's got to work. These guys work really well, and they're affordable. We sell these for $95 down at our local saddlery down Main Street. To bring the mob back towards me. I don't have to give her any instructions. She just knows that she's got to always be bringing the sheep back towards me. If I go one way, she'll naturally go the other. If I try and go one way, she'll goes back the other. That's what we call balancing on that mob, okay? Jimmy, bless his heart, can only balance on his 4 feet. That's about all Jimmy's got. All right, we want to take our sheep over into the stockyards there now. We're going to draft the sheep. As a stockman, we have an incredible bond with our horse. You don't spend that sort of time with an animal and not develop something truly special. But at the end of the day, as a stockman, we just ride around the bush. Those boys rode their horses into battle. And that's an entirely different animal altogether. For whatever reason, we didn't bring our mates home. We don't want to dwell on that, but I think it's very important we forever honour their memory and forever their legacy. So if you'll join me in removing our hats as a sign of respect, lest we forget.